So is this for Z?
Okay, so
Send this to Z.
we're filming a video, and Mike had a really interesting thing that we were talking about, and so we're gonna try to see if we can kind of
I'm
get
gonna
it
get
the
this
way it
all
was.
wrong.
But George Soros,
George Soros.
George Soros and his philosophy
Yeah.
on negativity and positivity. Explain that.
Which I can a little bit. So, okay. So George Soros, billionaire hedge fund guy, right? He spent his life basically trying to refine a philosophy that he kind of came up with that he calls reflexivity. And it's interesting for a whole lot of reasons, particularly. Oh, I see. I'm already confused. So reflexivity, the philosophy, as he applies it to markets specifically, but then he also applies this to society at all sorts of different levels. And within the markets, it's reflexivity, and there's what he defines as positive and negative feedback loops. And a positive one is very easy to understand, and the example he gives is oil, and the price of oil goes up, so people drive more efficient cars, the oil drillers drill more holes in the ground, produce more oil, price of oil goes back down, and it self-corrects. That's what he calls a negative reflexivity. Positive reflexivity is where the opposite happens, and the feedback loop reinforces itself. Instead of correcting, it makes it worse. And as an example of this, the housing market is a good example of it, where house values go up. So I buy a house, which makes house values go up further, making the people who already own houses feel richer. Now my house is worth more money, so you can spend more money. So the whole economy goes up. And then everybody starts looking at, well, the economy is up and houses are up and life is great, and you buy more and more houses because you're richer, until the housing bubble pops. And you get the massive correction, which he says, or theoretically, would be infinite at the extreme, like complete collapse, the banks collapse, society collapses, basically. Industry collapses because the banks have collapsed. You can get funny. The whole thing just goes, and you've literally got guns in the street at the infinite level. See, I'm already losing the train of my thought here. So that's the markets, and he says that's created by people looking at the market, going, "Oh, market looks good. I'll invest." And it's the people looking at it that have created this. And this gets kind of weirdly quantum, where by observing the phenomena, you've affected the phenomena. Well, obviously, you're also creating, you're calling this into creation. You can get really weird here, and he does, and I don't really pretend to understand it. I'm gonna get that wrong. But you can apply the same thinking to politics, for instance, where you get crazy and crazier and crazier until you're way down a rabbit hole, until it has to correct or you'll collapse. Same thing applies. Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
So are you saying that is the point that there's a point of no return, where you can no longer self-correct?
No, it will always self-correct. It will correct. Reality will impose itself. We are not beyond it. Yeah, it will impose itself. But at any point, you can intervene and deflate it and solve the problem, go back to normal, deflate the housing bubble, or whatever you got there. Markets, the Federal Reserve could raise interest rates and just cool the whole thing down before it reaches a point where the banks are going to collapse, where they've bet so big on the houses, the whole 08. I think we all understand what happened there.
So it's that.
But when it pops, interestingly, is like, so Soros's trading philosophy, how you profit from this, seeing these bubbles inflate or deflate. You know, you can go the other way where people are thinking too negatively about stuff and reinforcing themselves in a negative way and making it go down even more until it becomes so like, well, it's crazy cheap. Well, no, yeah. So his idea is like, you pour gasoline on the fire. Just go throw billions at buying houses and make it even worse.
Tell the story about how George Soros made $1 billion in a day.
Billion in a day on the trade. This is kind of why he's famous. $1 billion in a day, trading on the pound.
By pouring gasoline on the fire.
English currency.
Like he would just overinvest, like whatever was going south. He would just pour billions into it and just make
$1 billion in a day
force the bubble to pop
on the currency trade, the pound for the dollar. $1 billion in a day, shorting the pound, driving it down, fucking selling short, pressure. I mean, fighting the Bank of England in that. So the Bank of England's in the market and they're buying pounds. Like, we know you're selling, we're buying, and it's just supply and demand, right? You're fighting the bank. You're fighting a country with a printing press, like. But the bond market knows what's going on. They're kind of on your side. It's fucking overvalued, and down she goes. Down you go, a day.
And the crash,
impressive.
And the crash doesn't happen. The crash doesn't happen overnight. The crash.
Interestingly,
the crash is a gradual curve going down.
Yeah, you could. So up to the point where you short it. His idea is like pour gas on the fire, like add fuel to it. Houses are going up, buy houses, make them go up even more. It's crazy. And then when you see it deflating, when you see it, it's correcting, the market's realized, like, or whatever's realized, like, this is wrong. Then you short, and
then you turn around,
and it's a steep decline. You know, money, shorting it all the way down,
and $1 billion in a day.
And you just have to, his idea is that you just have to arrange yourself to be in a position where you can now bail out of the market you just got into and short it and go trade the opposite way. And it's kind of cool. Very interesting philosophy.
All right, well.
Very, very deep, confusing.
Not quite as verbose as the first time, but when you try to get stuff on camera.
Yeah, it'll be all wrong.
It always turns out.
Whatever. And I'm getting this totally, check this out, Z, because it's, whatever I've said is probably 80% wrong. I think I've got the basics down. Reflexivity, George Soros.
All right. We got something.